All right, hello and welcome to the Sprint 135 review of ManageIQ. Um, Today the speakers will be myself. I'll give an overview. Harpreet will give us an update on the UI. Adam will update us on the providers. Joe V on the platform, and Jason on the developer experience. So this is the chart of pull requests merged and opened and remaining open per sprint. If you notice, we actually fixed the total PR is still open. It was broken last sprint, so we got it readjusted. And it was kind of high and now tailing off. Also seeing that PRs open in the sprint as well as merged is kind of trailing down last few sprints. I'm attributing that to some people in the community kind of focusing on other efforts and not devoting as much time as they did before. On the closed pull requests by label, we have 57 that were bug fixes and 36 were enhancements, and then the rest were sprinkled around. So that seems pretty in line with the last, the Sprint 134 numbers, except that they're kind of just generally a little smaller. In general, as we kind of get to the end, closer to releasing ManageIQ Yansa, we will probably see more bug fixes and fewer enhancement requests, because the enhancement requests would be more destined for the Kasparov release instead of the Yansa release. In terms of the code health, this is a chart of the all the major repos that we're tracking. This is an updated chart, but I don't yet have the sprint to sprint kind of changes. So still working on that. But yeah, so that's kind of where we are. And on the community side, again, we are working on getting Yansa closer to GA. We're kind of hoping to do that within the next 6 weeks or so, and we'll see how it goes. So over to Harpreet on the UI.
Thanks, Oleg. Hello, everyone. We had a total of 29 PRs merged. There were 16 bug fixes, 10 enhancements, and so on. Some of the main bug fixes and all of the enhancements are listed here on this slide with the links to their PRs for you to look over them later. I just want to mention one of the enhancement PRs before moving on to the next slide. That's the first one under enhancements. So David replaced our existing Angular-based font icon picker with a React component. I don't have any screenshots to show that because visually it looks the same, but please visit that PR to see list of issues addressed during this conversion. Okay, so next slide, please. Minor change here was made to first level menus on the left side navigation. All the provider menus are now moved to be together on the list, followed by control and monitor menu items. Next slide, please. A bug was fixed on list views. Previously on the list views that did not have filters or advanced search available, there was no way to perform a quick search. As you can see on the top left screenshot, there is no search box available to perform a search through name column in the list view, but now with the fix in 6994, quick search has been made available on all such list views. Next slide, please. And on the API side, support for check compliance action was added to several object types that includes hosts, providers, instances, and templates. I have an example of API command here that runs check compliance for 2 hosts and a screenshot that displays result returned from that command. Next slide, please. Another enhancement made to group API, it allows now user to add filter expressions while adding or editing new groups. You can see the sample API command with its output here that adds an entitlement with expression to the group. This is equivalent to adding tags based on expression for a group through classic UI that you can see here on the screenshot on the left side. And that is all I have for the UI. On to Adam.
Thanks, Harpreet. For Amazon, Dan Berger fixed an issue with targeted refresh of classic Elastic IP addresses. These types of Elastic IPs don't have an allocation ID, which is what we were using as the manager ref when we were building the target in the event catcher. This led to us not being able to find those targets when we went to do the actual refresh, so they were skipped. Dan allowed both allocation ID and public IP to be used when we were catching those targets in the event catcher, so that fixed that bug. On Ansible Tower, there was an issue that invalid YAML in extra bars on a job template was causing the entire refresh to fail. So now, I didn't finish writing that bullet actually. So now we catch that exception and only fail that one job template as opposed to causing the entire refresh to fail. Next slide. Kubernetes, we refactored the main container manager parser. So before, the Kubernetes provider had its parser structured in such a way that both legacy refresh and graph refresh could share the same parser code. Now that we're not doing legacy refresh anymore, we can clean up a whole bunch of things there. So we were able to remove things that were being added to hashes that were just being deleted later to be saved in a different way. So we got to clean up a lot of redundant code there. And this also allows us to use the same parsers when we're going to be doing watch notifications in the future. So we'll be able to share the same parsers between full refresh and targeted refresh. On the Nuage side, so Nuage was kind of an odd duck in that it was the only provider that you couldn't run cross-repo tests on because it had extra steps to be able to run their spec tests. They have to install a libcupid proton C library. That was being done in the Travis YAML in a before step. And when you run that through cross-repo tests, it doesn't have access to that Travis YAML, and so it wasn't actually bundle installing with the proper gems. There's an optional gem for it. There's a Cupid Proton Ruby gems group in the main gem file. So in this sprint, we fixed the way that the Nuage provider is bundling with those gems in such a way that if you just do cross-repo tests on all the providers, Nuage will pass now. On the cross-repo gem side, we had to call out to the tools CI before install script on all of the plugins before it was only being done on the Manage IQ repo. We actually do that across the board for all plugins that have one now, and that allowed us to do some refactoring on the cross-repo gems, and we actually reduced the number of cases. So now core and all the plugins are run exactly the same. So that was a nice enhancement as well. And that's it for providers. Over to Joe.
There we go. Found my mute button. So this sprint, 37 PRs were merged in the platform space. Nick C made an enhancement to avoid running worker pods as root, and there's more related PRs for this work in a section coming up on another slide. Keenan made an enhancement to avoid raising errors and issues warnings instead where appropriate. Brandon made an enhancement as an initial effort for configuring an external queue messaging system. For bug fixes, Adam addressed one where some workers failed to load properly due to some VIM strings in the notification options error, which requires VM types to be loaded properly. Nixie fixed a bug where the image tag was not propagated to worker pods, and Nixie fixed another issue where worker containers were not being cleaned up when the Manage IQ custom resources was deleted. Yuri addressed a bug where the cockpit worker process was not starting, and I fixed a bug where an initial login race condition could result in duplicate user records being created. Next slide, please. I'm not going to talk about every bullet on this slide. There are a list of PRs Satoe had contributed to improve our build, and Keenan made a contribution to move the Rails 5.2 effort forward. Next slide, please. Again, this sprint, there were a lot of PRs merged in the Manage IQ pods repo. The highlights are some enhancements. Mark Lee made one to ensure resource created by ManageIQ instances have the same life cycle as the ManageIQ instance itself. And Guanggang Ye added an OLM cluster operator management files, and he bumped the version of the operator SDK to 0.15.1. Nixie contributed enhancement to provide defaults for custom resource values. Bennett White added an orchestrator delay parameter to ensure it does not start prematurely. And Nixie contributed the necessary orchestrator side with this change. These other ManageIQ pod enhancements are related to the work Nick had done that I mentioned in the ManageIQ space, not to run the app as root. For bug fixes, Nixie addressed a bug where the Postgres and HTTPD config maps were empty when deploying the operator as a container. He resolved this by encoding the HTTPD and Postgres config as a static string and functions. And Nixie addressed a bug where the orchestrator was requesting permissions the operator didn't have, and he resolved this by using a role for the orchestrator. And lastly, there were a few random cleanups that were done in the space. And that's it for the platform space. On to a presentation from Jason.
Hey everyone. So I wanted to call out that I'm going to be doing a new slide for the sprint demos. I'm calling it the developer slide. What I'll be talking about in this slide is mostly developer-oriented concerns and less about the application. Some more meta type things that may affect all developers. Things like Travis changes or new repositories, something like that. So first off, we got some new repositories. We have the ManageIQ RPM build repository. These are a number of scripts that Satoe put together for building ManageIQ into RPMs. We want to start moving appliances to an RPM-based system. Right now, appliances use just Git clones, but it makes it very difficult to upgrade them, and build times are very long because we have to Git clone and bundle install inside every single appliance type. And so an RPM-based system would allow us to create a single RPM and then just yum install it on every box, which should improve build times and improve things like upgrades and bug fixes and security issues and all that stuff. So that effort's just been started, and you can follow it there. Another new repository is the .github repository. This is a standard GitHub thing at the org level for creating default health files. Health files are things like contributing MD or your code of conduct. And there's a link there talking about it. Oleg started that repo up to start consolidating some of our default files. And finally, we have two new Ansible repositories, Ansible ManageIQ Automate and Ansible ManageIQ VMDB. These are Ansible roles that were originally part of Drew B's personal GitHub account and personal Galaxy account and that are used in the community. And so I worked with Drew to get them transferred over to be the official ManageIQ ones. So we transferred the repositories and also transferred the roles. So if you check out galaxy.ansible.com/ManageIQ, you can see the new role location. The old roles are still there, so if you have automation using it, Galaxy still has them. They're just marked as deprecated. But new updates will be coming in the ManageIQ side, and Drew's won't have any new updates. So thank you, Drew. Next slide, please. As Adam said, in the cross-repo test side, we now have a across-the-board change. So if you have a before install defined in your plugin, it will run. And so if you have some custom setup, particularly RPM packages like the Nuage Cupid Proton, they can be put in there instead, and then cross-repo tests will succeed for those. And finally, Brandon worked hard on getting RubyGems ManageIQ.org moved over to new hosting, and a number of scripts were uploaded into our ManageIQ release repo for updating those. Initially, there was some changes during the DNS change, but I think all of that has been fleshed out. If you see any problems, let us know. And that's it for me.
And that's it for the sprint. We'll see you next time in 2 weeks for the Sprint 136 review. Thank you, everyone who contributed, and look forward to seeing everyone next time.